Joining us now on the line is Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky. Senator, it's always a pleasure to have you here.
Good morning. Glad to be with you.
I guess I want to start out by asking you the question about the budget deal that has been proposed, because that's the big news on Capitol Hill. Some people are saying that okay, we'll do this. Sort of holding their nose and saying not thrilled, but we'll do it. And other people saying, you know what, this is the wrong thing to do. Where are you on the budget deal?
I think we make the mistake so many times around here of trading spending cuts that we have in the hand for the promise of spending cuts later. I call it sort of the wimpy idea of budgeting. I'll gladly pay you Tuesday for a hamburger today. And I really just don't think it's a good idea. The sequester cuts were slowing the rate of growth of government. We didn't need less of the sequester. We actually need to extend the sequester to the mandatory spending. And that's the way you would actually fix the problem up here.
So I'm guessing, based on that you're not going to vote for this budget deal.
Yeah, you can't. You shouldn't trade budget cuts now for a promise of budget cuts later. If you spread the budget cuts over 10 years, the problem is that what you end up having is when you spread them over 10 years is a promise, but future Congresses may or may not adhere to that. And see, we had the sequester 2 years ago, and they're already breaking the promise there.
Senator, how many of your colleagues in the Senate do you think are going to side with you on that and vote against this if it makes it over to the Senate?
Half the Republicans.
That's a big number.
Yeah, but that's not enough. Unfortunately, there'll be no Democrats and half the Republicans. So unfortunately, that's 1/4 of the body or 1/3 of the body. And the bottom line is, though, that the biggest thing that confronts us as a nation is the debt. When we passed the sequester deal in 2011, S&P downgraded us because they said the sequester was not enough. Now we're going back on the sequester because everybody says, oh, it's too harmful, it's too harsh, we can't possibly do it. Well, guess what? We have been living with the sequester. It forces people to make decisions on spending, and that's exactly what we need around here. And S&P in 2011 said even the sequester wasn't enough.
Do you think that Paul Ryan's argument that this will eventually reduce the deficit by more than $20 billion is not genuine?
I think he's sincere in trying to do something that he perceives as good, but I think the deal's a bad deal. I think that it's a mistake for us to do this. It's a mistake to give up spending cuts that are part of the law for the promise of spending cuts later. And, no, I wouldn't do it. I think that the sequester wasn't enough in 2011. The marketplace, as well as S&P, said it wasn't. Recently, we did nothing, and China downgraded our debt. If you want to make our country or put our country on more sound footing, you have to keep the sequester and add to it, not get rid of the sequester in exchange for the promise of cuts later.
All right, but let me ask you this. Big picture. Stop for a moment and pull back. You guys, and when I say you guys, I'm talking about Republicans in general, were in real trouble not long ago as a result of the government shutdown. The poll numbers were going against you. And then, as people began to learn about Obamacare and they realized what a disaster it really, really was, and you guys had been the guys who had always been saying, Obamacare is a disaster, you got to do something about it, and people started to come around to your way of thinking. Right now, there is a very good chance that Republicans could take the Senate. But not if you fight and have another budget cut battle and the government shuts down.
I'm not in favor of shutting the government down. I wasn't last time. So I'm not in favor of any strategy that involves shutting the government down. The thing that's been going on, and it's not perfect and really not advisable either, but continuing resolutions, that's been what's been going on for 4 or 5 years around here as you continue, but you would keep the sequester. When you break the sequester, it shows that you're really not serious about controlling the deficit. So the sequester was at the least we had to do, and if we give up on that, it says that we're not serious about the deficit, and I would be concerned that credit agencies would actually downgrade us for giving up on the sequester.
Where do you think your colleague Mitch McConnell, the minority leader, will come down when this comes to the Senate for a vote?
I don't know. I don't really presume to talk for any of the other senators, but I can only speak for myself, and that I think it's a mistake to give up on the sequester.
Can we pivot a little bit to Iran? This idea of sanctions seems to have fallen by the wayside. Any thoughts on that and where that's going to go this year, if anywhere?
I think that the sanctions, I've always voted for sanctions on Iran because I've wanted to bring Iran to the negotiating table. So I think we've had some success in that they are at the negotiating table. I think it's a mistake to add new sanctions while we're negotiating. However, I will vote for more sanctions if they do not adhere to what they are promising, or if we get to the 6 months and it appears that they've broken any of the agreements they've made. I think it's a mistake to do it in the middle of this. At the same time, I think it's also a mistake to withdraw sanctions without proof of their compliance. So it is sort of a mixed bag of where we are now. But I think that we have to think this thing through very well if our goal is negotiation and not war.
Very quickly, and we got off on the news of the day, you've got a proposal for saving Detroit. Talk about that.
Well, it's a proposal for saving any of our economically impoverished areas around the country, any area that has unemployment 1.5 times what we have, so about 12% unemployment. They would be eligible for significant tax breaks. We won't give Detroit anything. We won't give Kentucky anything. We'll just let them keep more of their own money. But it turns out it's a pretty significant amount of money. We cut the corporate and personal income tax, cut the payroll tax, and the capital gains tax. It actually leaves over $1 billion in the economy of Detroit. It would leave nearly $650 million in the economy of Louisville. And it would be a huge stimulus in the sense that the money would go to people who the customers are already voting for, to people who are paying taxes.
Right.
Instead of the government choosing winners and losers, the customer would.
Interesting thought. Well, Senator, thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having me. We'll do